Thank you, Daphne, for your speech. As we proceed with the program, and the person you've all been waiting for, I do have some news to share with you. This is not part of the program, by the way. I was just informed that there's a national alert right now, a national security alert, actually, which was issued by the National Security Agency. The APB reads something like, I don't know, Caucasian, male, 5.9, white, blue eyes, some wavy stuff going on islands. If you do spot somebody of that, nature, half long hair, nobody really knows what's going on, but there's that APB. So whatever you do, make sure you hold on to your phones really tightly because some interesting stuff is going to happen tonight. I have the honor, actually, for the first time in my life, to actually share a stage and call upon this stage a hacker, which is actually a great honor. He goes by many names. The one I love best is ethical hacker, or if you like it in Dutch, de helpende hacker. Talk about oxymorons, Mr. G. How do you combine that one? I can think of some others, but I won't do that at this moment. He's the Chief Intelligence Officer at Red Sox in the Netherlands. No, he's not a colleague of Mr. Xander Bogaerts. This is in the Netherlands. This is not the baseball team Red Sox. This is CKS, not X. He's worked at the hacker company. As I said, he's an ethical hacker, so he has a purpose. Whatever he does, he has a serious purpose behind this. He's Director and Digital Forensic Investigator at Digital Investigation BV. He's also the founder of Waarneming NL, but the best. This is like the best, all right? So I guess he must have been bored in 2005 or something, I don't know. But it dawned upon him that there was a server that was simply not working. So he decided to hack into the server at the University of Michigan, subsequently tipped by the FBI, the Dutch police, spent a couple of free meals somewhere, I guess, and then became really famous. I mean, we should definitely follow in your path, hack a server, become famous. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please give Mr. Ricky Gevers a big round of applause. Thank you.
The guy we are looking for, his name starts with an R. That's all I want to say about it. If we're talking about my criminal past, there's one thing you should know. I was a minor at the time, which is very important, of course. Although I was not, the punishment I got was as an adult. Didn't really make sense, to be honest. But I was one of the first in the Netherlands actually to get a punishment. And the police in the Netherlands were like, yeah, we have to arrest hackers. So they got a number that's common in Holland to do. So arrest 10 hackers the first year, for example. So they started with the easiest target, which was me, actually. And the reason why it was me was because the FBI tipped the Dutch police. So they basically got hand over the whole investigation. They didn't have to do that much at all. But what I didn't like about that is that it took them 3 years to redo the whole investigation. So I got arrested 3 years after the FBI found me, and the whole investigation of the FBI themselves took 1 year as well. So it took them 4 years in order to arrest me. So the guys arrested me, and they were like, you probably know what we are catching you for. I was like, I have no idea at all. They're like, you know what you've done, you know what you've done. So they eventually showed me the evidence, and I was like, well, come on, that's fucking 4 years ago. Do you think I still remember those kind of things? But I gotta be true and honest, I did commit some crimes, and I was one of the first to get arrested ever, and that's the reason why I'm actually standing here. It's a cool story, or at least it's the reason a lot of people ask me, but I'm absolutely not a criminal at all, let that be clear. I'm turning on a device right now. Keep that in mind, but that's all I'm gonna say about it. So let's start the presentation. I'm working at a company called Red Sox. What I'm doing there is I'm investigating criminals as of today, the ones that have a financial target at least, and in my spare time I'm looking at the countries that are doing cybercrime as well, or at least what we call in our industry the APTs, the advanced persistent threats, the ones that will always get into your company. And it doesn't work. And now it does. Here you see a picture of a typical spy in the 70s, around the 70s, 60s or something. You have a person that is sitting behind a newspaper. And in the newspaper you have a very small hole. This guy is tracking one individual. And you can imagine that if you want to track that target, you're going to need a lot of people that are actually looking through the newspaper and seeing where this target is moving. That means that if you have one very important target, you're probably going to need, sound is a little bit annoying sometimes, you're going to need a lot of people that are tracking those targets. But nowadays, if we look at Russia, for example, we have 50, maybe 100 hackers that are influencing the whole election system in the United States as of this moment. If you think about it, there's probably nobody going to think that cyber, or at least the internet, doesn't have influence on all of us at this moment. It does. It's too easy to influence anything you want, actually. Recently, we've seen a lot of things like this in the newspaper. Our power plants get hacked, the banks get hacked, dams get hacked, for example. And one of the things I do in Holland is being an incident responder. That means that if a company, for example, is in trouble, they hire me to fix the problem. That basically means that if there's a hacker active in the company and he is destroying things within the company, this company says, yeah, I have a big problem, we need some people to fix it. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to fix the problem. I'm going to kick out the hacker first, and then we're going to safely turn on the company again in such a way that the company can get back online without any problems. The first thing you do when you go to such a company is sign an NDA. With that NDA, the company itself guarantees that none of the things that are happening within the company gets into the public, out there in the open. But in the meantime, we see these kind of things happen. And what it tells you is that it's happening everywhere. But in the meantime, most of the things will never get into the general public. Most of the things that happen in cybercrime will never eventually reach the public. And today I'm going to try to at least give you an idea of what are the things that are happening in the underground and the things we are not seeing happening. I'm going to tell you that you have been hacked. I can guarantee you, and I'm going to show you at the end of the show as well. If we look at the maturity model of the internet today, everybody probably understands this picture. As a baby, you know that at one point you have legs, you try to stand up, and you fall down. If I compare this to the maturity level of the internet, we're probably still babies. We've just found out we have legs, and we're trying to stand up. But with standing up, there's one thing that's going to happen for sure. We're going to fall down as well. And that didn't happen yet with the internet. And I can guarantee you that it's going to happen one day, and we're going to have a serious thing that is going to happen to all of us, and everybody's probably going to notice it. But it's just the next step into getting mature, and we'll see whatever happens. These are some of the trends we are seeing in cybercrime today. One of the coolest things, or at least one of the most profitable things at this moment, is ransomware. Ransomware, I think most of you have all come across ransomware. Ransomware basically means that you get an email in your private email box that tells you the post office has been at your door, you weren't home, and there's going to be a package waiting for you. So everybody's interested. Oh, somebody's sending me a package. What's it going to be? It's probably interesting. So most of the people are going to click that link because they obviously want the package. Clicking that link provides you with the ability to say when you want to get the package. But from the moment on you click on that link, you have to download something. But the mindset is already that you've already clicked a link, you've already set one step into receiving your package. So installing that program, or at least downloading that executable file, is not really a very big step. So a lot of people also click on that link. And from that moment on, your computer gets locked, and you see a big sign that you have to pay $50 or $500 in order to unlock your computer. There are very funny variants of this. In the beginning, there were a few that first installed some child porn on your computer. And that's a nasty one, of course, because once you see the picture of child porn, you're like, shit. Everybody knows those stories where people get sued or wherever because they possess child porn, which they didn't download, or at least they say so. So you get frightened from those things, but nowadays they don't use child porn, they just lock your computer and want you to pay $50 or $500 within that range. And the funny thing about this whole thing is the business model behind it. We are doing business with criminals. And the whole problem with criminals is that you know they are criminals, and we cannot trust criminals, right? But here, if one criminal, for example, would lock your computer, you would pay him, and he wouldn't give your files back. You're never going to pay him again, right? So these criminals need to be trusted. They need to give those files back whenever they can. And that's kind of funny. Because in this whole business model, we know that we can trust these criminals. There are actually several cases in which the criminals messed the administration, they made a mess of it, which if a customer, for example, paid them, they didn't know which key belonged to their file. So they were like, shit, which key belonged to him? I cannot give him his files back. So what they did is they released all of the keys in order to keep the trust model intact. And everybody knows that if you pay those criminals, you're going to get your files back. Of course, there are some coincidences that didn't work, but those are not really the ones. Usually, if you pay this for a ransomware, you're going to get your files back. A lot of the police say never ever trust criminals and never ever pay for your files. But I guarantee you, if you lost all of your photos and you want them back, you don't have a backup, for example, you better pay it because you're going to get your files back. So this is like in my opinion, at least, a very funny business model. Then we have the point of sale attacks, and that is very major in America. You have a lot of stores, online stores. Target, for example, they use these point of sale systems where you swipe your credit card and the payment is processed. A lot of Russian criminals actually hack these point of sale systems and transfer all of the credit card information back to Russia, and they then go somewhere in China. They order a lot of things, or at least cash out, that's what I call it. And these guys get really rich from it. There's a few people that get really rich from cybercrime. The Russians are one of them. And nowadays, what we are seeing is the APTs, the Advanced Persistent Threat. That's a major topic right now. You see a lot of countries that are hacking into other countries in order to benefit from it, get some financial gain, know some tactics the other people, the other country is doing, and learn from those kind of things. It's a major topic, and we're going to see this a lot today. Then there's this funny one. It's not a real common one. Everybody knows that their personal financial accounts can get hacked, and some money at least gets transferred. But since like maybe 1 year, I think so, SWIFT is getting hacked. And SWIFT is the international payment system. They have a monopoly. Every single bank is attached to SWIFT. If you make a payment through SWIFT, and SWIFT acknowledges the payment, your money is gone. What amount of money it is, it doesn't matter. If it's like 500 million euro, you send it somewhere, SWIFT acknowledges it, it's gone. You're never going to get the money back. And what these guys did now is they were able to hack several banks and make money transfers to companies, or at least banks. They raised themselves, or at least they what is it called? They created their own banks and they transferred the money to their own banks. And the whole funny thing about this is that it's not a criminal gang that is doing these kind of things. It's Kim Jong-un from North Korea who's doing this. He's actually making himself rich by transferring a lot of international money to his own bank account. And as I said, once it's transferred to SWIFT, it's gone. And if we look at the security measures that SWIFT is taking to prevent these kind of things, I can basically laugh about it. Because how SWIFT transfers money sometimes is they have codes for 1 day. So you have like 1120, which is the code of that day. And if you enter that code, you enter the transaction, you're done. Most people here in the audience probably have more security measures than SWIFT has. This is kind of funny, right? Especially if so much money is going through such places. Um, one of the things I used to do is ethical hacker, the one, the name you like most. I'm not doing that too much right now because I'm kind of bored with it. If you look at my success rate while being a penetration tester, it was 100%. So, yeah, easy target, that you say. That's always at the first test. If you have a second test, the chances are lower, of course. But I never recommend an ethical hacker to test your company twice. Always get another hacker because I'm going to pick the same way, of course. So I defend against my own rules. It doesn't make sense. Pick another one. But the starting point is always passwords. We're first going to look at the technicians in the company and see what passwords they are using. I can tell you this. Who's amazed by this? That's not that many. Normally people don't know this. But I can guarantee you, and if you don't believe me, test it, come towards me, tell me your name, and I'm going to tell you your password. And I'm going to guarantee you that it's 75%. So that's quite a lot, right? And of course we know in this audience everybody changes his password regularly, right? We never use the same password at the same account, or different accounts, I mean. Right? No, nobody does those kind of things. I actually did that the same as well, so we got to start somewhere. The funny thing is, if you look at the password policies, it's always applied to the employees of a company. Every employee here probably knows it, that you have to change a password at your company office every single month or something. It's like really annoying. You have your password ending with 01, and the next month you make it 02 and 03. Right? So it's very hard if I find your password to guess what your next password will be. But in the meantime, that's what's happening. But if we look at the policies, policies never apply for routers and switches, which are the main core functions within a network. So I'm going to take a look at the engineers within a company. I'm going to see what their passwords are in the database. And I can guarantee you, in most of the cases at least, if I connect to a router or a switch, that password is applied on that machine. So you, as employees, are changing your password all of the times, while the core, or at least the main parts of your company's network, do not have a policy at all. So that's an easy game for me. And now we have the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things is going to be a major problem. Because Internet of Things, like your fridge, for example, or your phone, what is cars nowadays actually, anything you can imagine will be connected to the Internet. And there's a lot of companies building these devices, and they never give you the ability to apply a policy on it. But everybody's going to eventually at least buy them. Every single company is going to buy a fridge, and that fridge is going to have the ability to connect to your network. And we're going to do that because it's easy. The fridge can tell you what you need to buy next month, for example, which is very useful for me as well. Another cool example, at least in my experience, is TV5 Monde. That's a French television station. And that television station got hacked. This was 1 month after the attacks in Paris. So in Paris, this was a really big thing. This channel broadcast 12 stations, and 11 of them were having black screens. They weren't able to broadcast anything at all, which was a major deal at the time because TV5 Monde has to be able to broadcast at any time. That's been put in the French law, because whenever a major incident happens within the country, everybody should be able to turn on the television and see what's happening in the country. They have very specific SLA, service level agreements, what it's called. And TV5 Monde actually survived this incident by 1 hour. If the whole attack would have lasted 1 hour more, the whole television station would have probably gone bankrupt. Is there anyone in the audience recognizing this guy? Nobody? Go on, one single person, please. No. That's too bad. I need to teach you a lot of things, I guess. This is a very young guy, 17 years old, UK guy. His name is Junaid Hussain. He hacked the private email of Tony Blair. I can guarantee you, if you hack the email of Tony Blair, you're going to get into trouble. Or at least you're going to get a lot of attention, right? So that's exactly what happened to this guy. Everybody knew what his group was doing. He had a group, of course not his name. So he hacked Tony Blair, and all of the investigators were like, we're going to catch this guy. So that actually did happen. But what was the most funny thing, he didn't only hack Tony Blair, he hacked several law officers as well. Which is not that typical. But the funny thing is that he actually hacked the law officers that were going to arrest him. By accident, I think so at least. And what happened here is that MI6, which is a secret service in the UK, were making a plan to arrest this guy. He, by incident, actually saw these emails passing by. And these emails contained a link for a conference call in which they were going to discuss how to arrest him. So he actually joined the conversation. And he recorded it. You can look it up on Google, you can listen to the whole conversation, which is very amusing, and I would absolutely recommend it to listen to. But the funny thing is, he listened into the whole conversation, and at the end of the conversation, he started to talk to the people as well. And there were 4 law officers in the conversation, 3 were like, shit. They run away, you don't hear them in the conversation at all. And one officer eventually starts to talk with him, and it's like, oh shit, we have a problem, but he's at least discussing it, which is a good thing to do, I think so at least. Eventually he leaked the conversation on the internet, as I said, YouTube. But of course, eventually he did get arrested. While he was arrested, he had, as a minor of course, he had some spare days to go to visit some family. And in the meantime, he became this. He actually went to Syria to join ISIS, or ISIL. That was a very serious, major event in the cyber world, at least, because we went from an organization, ISIL, that was completely not capable on the internet, to ISIL with this guy being at least capable of hacking Tony Blair's private email, which is like a real serious switch or change. So, major event. The funny thing is that you could follow this guy very good on the internet. You could follow his Twitter accounts or anything you want. He was like bragging all of the time about the things he was doing. He was actually posting pictures of bombs he was making. Kind of funny to follow. Well, funny. Interesting, I should say. But let's get back to this thing. And what is funny about here is that this Junaid Hussain built a team called the Cyber Caliphate. And this was 1 month after the attack in Paris, as I mentioned. And all of a sudden, on the main website of TV5 Monde, you see this picture of the Cyber Caliphate. So everybody was thinking at the time that it was Junaid Hussain that hacked the company. And everybody, major issue. But that was actually not really the case. It was actually Mr. Putin who was in that company doing all these kind of things. And this is a typical thing to do for Mr. Putin. Which is testing how good your capabilities on the internet are. And what he did here, he was basically testing if he could bring down a whole TV channel in order to see if he could stop the whole news broadcasting. You can imagine that if you're going to attack a company, or at least a country, for example, that you don't want the broadcasting to be on. As I mentioned, TV5 Monde has the what is it called? By law, they should be able to always broadcast. So if you can switch that down during war, that's a major achievement. And that's a typical thing for Mr. Putin to do, to test things in a small portion. Say it was ISIS, so everybody focused on ISIS. It was totally reliable, at least, to think that it was ISIS that did these kind of things. But it was actually not really the case. So this was a very good lesson. And what is more funny about this whole story is you have these cameras. These are studio cameras. These are studio cameras that you can remotely control. You can remotely control these cameras from the Netherlands. This is actually a Dutch company that manufactures these things. And if you go and look on YouTube, for example, and you look for TV5 Monde, and you look for the studio, they have a whole YouTube video explaining how those cameras work. Which is very interesting information, of course. And what actually did happen here is that the Dutch company got hacked. Through that Dutch company, they hacked the studio in TV5 Monde. And through those cameras, they did hack the whole network of TV5 Monde. And that's how they brought down the whole TV channels. What I'm trying to tell you here is that you can have very good security measurements within your company, but your supply chain is another thing. You are reliable on other things as well. You cannot just completely trust other companies, for example. Keep it in mind. You can have the best cameras within your studio, the best remote controlled cameras, but if they hack your studio and bring down all of your equipment, I don't know if it's a good idea to keep these things. Operation Hangover. Another very cool example. It's not because of the name, but it does bring you a lot of headaches. What happened here is in 2013, the Norwegian ISP, Telenor, got hacked. And as I said, as an incident responder, the first thing you do is sign an NDA. And you rarely see companies that bring out all of the facts that happened within their company. That's a rare thing to see. It did actually happen here. The whole company, Telenor, actually released the information that was used in order to hack their company. And the picture you see here, without the pig actually, that's another thing. But the picture you see here was actually used to compromise that company. It's a picture of weapons, I think so at least. And the funny thing is actually, there's an Indian, at least we think so, an Indian origin from behind it. And there's a lot of command and control infrastructure, which is a technical term for the main server that collects all of the data that has been stolen. And these servers were in India, and some people hacked those servers and saw that Indian IP addresses were the ones connecting to that server. So that tells us something at least about the origin of this attack. But I just noticed that there's literally India saying on those rockets, which I didn't see in the beginning. But they sent this document to several people, and if you open this document, something happens on your computer. If you do not update your computer, for example, your Windows Word update, it's very easy for me to hack your company. I can guarantee you that if you do not update for 1 month, for example, I can easily get in. I can almost get to a 100% success level, as long as you open the document, of course. But that did happen. The people opened the document, they got infected, and a lot of information got extracted from the company. But luckily, those guys shared all of the information, which provided us the ability to see what was happening during the whole attack. And what was more interesting about this attack was that these guys were, you can probably consider them minors, or at least not really professional. But they gave us a lot of information about what they were doing, to what extent their operation was going. So we actually found out that a lot of other companies were attacked, or at least targeted by them. And one of them is this one. I think everybody knows them. So when I started investigating this malware, I found this company, and I'm a nice guy, of course, everybody knows that. So I went to Delta Airlines and I told them, you guys are hacked, you guys are screwed, maybe you should do something about it. And the normal way to respond in these cases is, no, we are not hacked, nothing's going on. If they Google my past, they're even saying, you are the one that hacked us, for example, which is a very hard stance to have, at least. It can be conflicting, but I can guarantee you, if I go to your company and I tell you what is happening, you're in trouble. So I did to Delta Airlines. Delta Airlines investigated the whole thing. They said, no, nothing's going on, we're not hacked, nothing ever happened. This was in 2013. Does anyone still remember the outage of half a year ago, I think so? They lost $100 million because the whole IT network was broken. I have no idea what happened there. This is something we regularly see. One of the other companies I went to is this one. This is especially a famous one in the Netherlands. Endemol, they are making a lot of television shows in the Netherlands. I can guarantee you they were hacked, at least during the time. I went to them, told them everything I knew. And again, they said, no, we are not hacked, nothing's going on, and please move on. It's, as I said, a typical thing. So once again, if I approach your company, I don't want to make money of you, I'm just going to tell you what's going on, and maybe you should take your measurements. But there was another company, which was an oil company. And the funny thing here was that I was monitoring this group, as I said, and I saw 3 IP addresses, 3 random IP addresses, completely not connected to each other. But they were from the same company. A tiny, or at least not Shell, let's put it that way, a small oil company in the Netherlands. So I was like, they must have been like a very serious target. And it's not going to be by accident that you target 3 completely different IP addresses and they are from the same company, right? So I knew this company was targeted, and I knew that I should probably inform them so they could take some measurements. So I went to the company, told them everything that happened, and they were actually one of the few companies that did properly respond to my request. And after 2 days, they came back to me and they were like, no, nothing happened to our company, which I'm used to. And they said, this is the public Wi-Fi of our company, so it's probably just a visitor, nothing's going on, please move on. Let's get to the next one. And I was like, doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all. So I started to investigate the malware any further. And if you look at the details of the malware, this provided me the ability to see what IP addresses this computer was connecting from. And it also provided me with the computer name that was infected. So I started to look at the details of this infected machine. And this was what popped up. As you can probably not that good see, I could easily see where this computer was moving to. And it was somebody that was traveling a lot, apparently at least. You could see it, him visiting the United Arab Emirates, going to Ireland a lot, England, the Netherlands, Den Haag, for example, and one time to the Maldives, which was probably a vacation of some sort. This gives you a very good insight of what person, or at least the computer that was infected, where he was going. So it could probably bring us back to the person that was infected. And as I told you, I also knew the workstation of the person that was infected. So I got back to the company after 1 week, called the person again, very nice person, luckily. And I told him, this workstation is infected, so you're probably going to have to look again. That's what he did. And 5 minutes later, he called me. It was the CEO of the company that was infected. That changes the whole thing, right? So we went from a situation where somebody that was a visitor, that was using the Wi-Fi, probably was infected. That turned out to be the CEO of the company that was infected. Major change of plans. What was the case here, and everybody probably recognizes it. If we're talking about policies, policies never apply to CEOs, right? CEOs always need a MacBook, while everybody's using Windows, right? Or is this different here? And what happens when a CEO goes to the IT staff and tells them, I want my MacBook? The IT staff says, of course, you're the CEO. You're going to get your MacBook, right? That's what always happens. And if you're an IT technician here in the audience that doesn't do that, I would like you to raise your hand. It never happens. Policies only apply to employees, right? But if you come to this extent, and if me as a hacker, for example, what do you think I think about those kind of situations? I'll tell you. Ideal situation. It's like somebody opening a door and telling you, please get in, please steal everything you want. Easy target for me. Like 100% guaranteed type things. What happened here is that the IT guys actually built quite a secure Windows network, but we had the CEO with his MacBook willing to connect to the Windows environment, and if you have Apple, it's not going to work that properly. So what they did is install VirtualBox, and within VirtualBox they opened a Windows machine, and that Windows machine was then able to connect to the Windows network for him, making sure that the CEO could work on the network as well. What they forgot is that they didn't apply policies on that machine, of course. So we ended up with a MacBook having a Windows installation on it that didn't receive updates for 2 years. And if you don't receive updates for 2 years, I'll tell you what happens. Or at least I hope I don't tell you what happens. But it's an easy shot, it's an easy target. It's guaranteed I will get in there. Like, I don't even have to do that much. I just get in. In this case was, I shouldn't say funny actually, because eventually the CEO was fired because of this. The shareholders didn't really agree about his policy and everything he used to do within this company. He didn't do incident response while this, at the end of this whole investigation. Eventually we did do incident response, and the result we came up with was that this laptop was breached for 2 years, and during all of those 2 years, all of the information was extracted from the laptop. Every single agreement this CEO made within the oil industry was being watched by other people. Anyone can imagine that that gives you a very huge benefit, of course, if you're doing business. Last subject, which is probably one of my favorites, the US election system. The funny thing is that in the Netherlands, most people are not really that interested into the whole thing that is happening there. I'm most likely the only single person in the Netherlands that is blogging about this all of the time. In the meantime, nobody in Holland cares, probably because the United States is that far away. But here in Aruba, people do care. So that's something I like. We have the elections in America, and we have Mr. Putin trying to influence those elections very much. As an incident responder, I know Mr. Putin is on our networks wherever you can imagine. The problem is that I cannot tell you where they are because, as I said, we have those NDAs. But now we have the elections, and Putin benefits by bringing out all the details on the networks he is in. So he's, for example, in the DNC network, he released a lot of the Hillary Clinton email spools, which give us a lot of insight. We don't see any of the Trump emails, rarely. I have no idea why that's happening, of course. But I do think Mr. Putin favors Trump. But what it does is it really provides us with the opportunity to see where Mr. Putin is, where he's lurking, where he's extracting information, and what he's doing with that information. Very good opportunity. Is there anybody that knows this nickname of Guccifer? One single person. Two, we have two. Finally. But a few years ago, we had Guccifer 1.0, which was the first Guccifer, a Romanian hacker, that hacked the email server of Hillary Clinton, and he eventually released some details. He got arrested. He's now in prison somewhere. Very serious case, or at least for that person. He's going to go to jail for a very long time. But the funny thing was that this Guccifer 1.0 blogged about that email server of Hillary Clinton several times. And he explained that there were a lot of other hackers on that server as well. He actually said the number of 20 other hackers. I read his blog post, and all of those blog posts are completely true. As an incident responder, I know those kind of things, and I know that it's like really normal if you have a server that's not updated that much, that there are a lot of hackers in those servers. They probably don't even know of each other that they are on those servers, and they probably don't even know that it's Hillary Clinton her server. But they are on there. They're lurking on that server, and they're extracting information. This guy got arrested, and now we have Mr. Putin saying that he was there as well, which doesn't come to as a surprise to me, at least. But the United States tends to have a favor by solving these kind of cases just by arresting one person, saying he was the one, put him to jail, case solved, case dismissed, move on. I do know that it's completely reliable to think that there were a lot of other hackers on those systems as well. So one of them is Guccifer. Guccifer is now actually leaking a lot of information through WikiLeaks. Perfect idea, of course. WikiLeaks benefits from those kind of things as well. Who knows Mr. Henk Kamp? If we go to the next subject, he is a Dutch minister. And what we are seeing now in the US elections is all of these private email accounts that get hacked from all sorts of politicians. We have John Podesta right now as well. Does this happen in the Netherlands? Of course not. We're not seeing it, right? The only thing we have seen is this email getting hacked of Henk Kamp. And the funny thing about this was actually that it was cyber criminals hacking his email account. And if you're a good hacker, you'll never notice that that guy has ever been on that system. I got arrested for hacking the University of Michigan. You don't want to know what else I did hack. They only caught me on one single system. One single system. I think I literally hacked millions of systems. Never ever did anyone catch me. The same applies for these hackers. I was a minor at the time. You can imagine that the serious guys are way more advanced at least. I didn't even hide my things. These guys do hide their things. But I can guarantee you that this is happening to politicians everywhere as well. We just don't know at this moment. It happens to Henk, as we know right now. And maybe later on the show we'll see some other politicians being a victim. Then we have this thing. We have the Russian athletes using doping. The FSB, the Secret Service of the Russians, provided a huge doping program for all of the athletes to take some doping, and they were manipulating the tests. They were hacking the WADA, which is the company that checks for those kind of tests, in order to keep all of these things a secret. And 2 athletes actually went to the United States and told everything about this whole program. And I can guarantee you, if you're from Russia and you're doing something bad, you're exposing Mr. Putin's plans, you are in trouble. Mr. Putin doesn't really think it's funny if you release these kind of things. So he didn't like this as well. And what he did do from the moment on that these people leaked the secret program is hack their private accounts. He immediately went after those people personally and hacked all of their accounts. And what is one of the most funny things, at least in my opinion, is that he actually hacked the WADA, the organization checking all of these doping tests, to their accounts, to these Russian athletes' accounts. That's kind of a show, right? If you first hack their account and then hack the WADA through their accounts as well. It's a statement, at least in my opinion. And in the meantime, Putin is leaking a lot of information about athletes that are using doping on a pre-described description of their doctors, in order to set a statement that it's not just the Russian athletes that are using doping, there are a lot of other athletes as well using doping. Let's skip to the last slide. The Ukraine power grid, another major event that happened in Ukraine. Most people don't know this event. Who knows this event? This happened during New Year's Eve. That's a perfect moment to orchestrate a cyber attack, right? Because either everybody's partying or everybody has a hangover at that moment, including the journalists, of course. So they're not going to report about it because they have a day off, whatever they're doing. They're not going to report about these kind of things, at least. What happened here is, as I told you, Mr. Putin always checks a lot of things. What he did here was, in one single province in Ukraine, during New Year's Eve, he switched off all of the electricity in the province, which is not a small thing to do, right? And if you look at what happened there, it's pretty funny, because you can imagine that you have a control room, an industrial control system is what it's called, and you have the operator sitting in that room. And one of the operators was actually sitting there during New Year's Eve, being bored, like everybody's partying, I'm sitting here, what is happening, why am I here? And in the meantime, the electricity gets switched off. That means that he has a very large screen behind him that goes red, tipping, blinking, or whatever. The electricity is off, maybe you should switch it on. So he went to the computer in order to reinstall, or at least turn on the electricity again. So he moved to that computer, grabbed his mouse, moved to the position in order to click and put the electricity on again. So he did, but the only thing that didn't happen was that his mouse didn't move. Actually, while he was watching the screen, the mouse was moving the other direction and was switching off the other power plants. Again, this time it was most likely, at least, Mr. Putin that orchestrated this whole attack just to test if he is able to switch off a country completely from electricity. let's see if I can fix this here tonight as well. I'm gonna need my assistant.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give Mr. Ricky an applause for his part one. Please, thank you. I am just a minor, just to be sure.
Okay, let's see. I'm gonna show you several things. I'm gonna use some sort of hacking device, and I'm gonna see if I can do some things with the audience right now. I'm switching it on. As you can see, this is a very easy tool to use. A lot of people think that hacking is very hard to do, but this is all you have to do. But let's get to another topic. Is Mr. Tito in the room?
Could you please stand up, Mr. Tito Lagley?
I see.
Yes? All right, right there. Yes.
I'm going to grab. I was actually on the radio show today with Mr. Tito, and I asked him if I could try and take a look at his account. And so I did. Do you have a Gmail address? Yes, you do. I'm going to write down your password. I'm a magician, you know. I never hacked his account or anything. I just know. Does it start with this? Yes. Do you have anything else to say? Okay, that's the first one. We just hit the jackpot. Is there anyone willing to? Maybe you should change your password. I'm also going to ask you another thing, and this is going to be a very hard one, or at least a tough one for everybody. I think it's very important for everybody to know that they are hacked. So I'm going to ask everybody two things. First of all, if you want to, of course, let that be clear. Write down the email address of your own company. So let's say if you're working for the Marriott, it's @marriott.com. Second one, and this is the one you're probably going to like, write down the email address, or at least the end of the email address, of your competitor. And then my assistant is going to choose several people from the audience, and we're going to take a look if your company has ever been compromised, or if your competitor company has been compromised.
Any volunteers? Yes, thank you. So basically, it's your own @email. I already see one victim we want to pick on there. I see number 2 here. We're going to be looking at your own email addresses and that with your competitor. Please raise your hands if you've completed the assignment so that I can pick up the forums and share that with the magician.
Let's be clear, it's about awareness. So these details have already been hacked.